My name is Elena Vargas, and I am 33 years old. 9 days before Christmas, my mother sent me a text while I was approving the final vendor contract at work. Sorry, honey, I forgot to book your room for our Christmas ski trip. The resort is completely full now. I read it twice, then opened the family group chat. Everyone else had a reservation. My parents had a suite. My sister had a corner room. My brother had invited someone, and somehow, even that person had a key waiting. Only I had been forgotten. The excuse might have worked if this had been our first trip. It wasn't. The year before, I had booked my own room after my mother said she was too overwhelmed, then spent 2 hours fixing everyone else's lift passes. At dinner, they toasted the perfect family vacation. No one thanked me. They only laughed that it was lucky I was so good at little details. Now, one of those little details was me. A new photo appeared in the group chat. Matching luggage lined up by the door, each bag tagged with a name. There was no tag for mine. My mother followed it with, "We'll bring you something." I felt no urge to argue. I typed, "That happens." Then I finished the contract, went home, and made 3 decisions. I transferred my old number to a voicemail-only service, accepted a short-term job lead in Portland, and removed myself from every family account they used to track my schedule. Before midnight, I had changed my number. By morning, I was gone. They believed they had excluded me from one Christmas. They had no idea they had just reminded me whose name had been sitting quietly on the resort's most valuable account for 7 years. Before I tell you where I went, and why 72 calls arrived the next Christmas, tell me, what time is it where you are, and where are you watching from? I want to see how far this story travels. I did not disappear recklessly. I left one email stating that I was safe, leaving voluntarily, and needed a year without contact. I included no address and no new number. That prevented my family from turning my boundary into a public emergency while giving them nothing they could use to follow me. My mother, Diane, replied within 4 minutes. "A year? Over a hotel room? Stop being dramatic." My father, Robert, wrote the next morning. "Your mother made an innocent mistake. Adults discuss problems instead of running away." My older sister, Melissa, waited 3 days before sending, "You're punishing all of us during my favorite holiday." My younger brother, Caleb, simply asked whether I could send him the password to our shared airline account before I went offline. That message hurt more than the others because it was honest. Even while I was disappearing, he remembered the service I provided before he remembered me. I resigned from my procurement position, sold the furniture I did not need, placed the rest in storage, and drove to Portland with 2 suitcases. I rented a small furnished studio for 6 months and accepted contract work reviewing supplier agreements for independent outdoor companies. Back home, my family checked into Silver Pine Alpine Club without me. I knew because the resort's automated system sent confirmations to an old email address I still controlled. My mother posted a photograph of everyone wearing matching white scarves beneath the caption, "Nothing matters more than having the whole family together." I stared at the empty space between Melissa and Caleb where I usually stood. The photograph looked complete. That was the moment I finally allowed myself to admit how much their neglect had hurt. I had spent years claiming that I did not need attention, but there was a difference between demanding attention and expecting basic consideration. I had never asked to be the center of their lives. I had only expected not to be erased from them. While I started rebuilding in Portland, their messages moved in the opposite direction. During my first week, Diane called my silence selfish. By the third week, Robert said I was embarrassing the family. A month later, Melissa wrote that people at the resort had asked where I was, and that she was tired of inventing explanations. In February, their anger became concern. In March, it became negotiation. Diane offered to organize a belated family dinner if I would come home. Robert promised to pay for a weekend somewhere else, as though another reservation could repair what the missing one represented. I did not answer. I also stopped reading every message. The old number remained active only as a cloud-based voicemail archive, and all family emails went into a folder labeled Later. I checked the number of messages occasionally, not their contents. Their panic no longer controlled my schedule. My days were now measured by contracts completed, invoices paid, and decisions made without asking whether my family would approve. I learned which Portland cafes allowed freelancers to stay for hours, which small manufacturers paid on time, and which clients believed independent consultant meant available at midnight. I said no more often than I ever had before. Each refusal felt uncomfortable, but each one also proved that discomfort did not destroy me. At the end of my second month, I received a package forwarded from my old apartment. Inside was the scarf my family had worn in their Christmas photograph. Diane had included a note. "We saved one for you." There was no apology. The scarf had not been purchased because they missed me. It had been purchased before the trip, when they still expected me to appear in their matching photograph without requiring a room. I folded it, placed it back in the box, and donated it the next morning. That simple act affected me more than changing my phone number had. The old Elena would have kept it to avoid seeming ungrateful. The new Elena understood that gratitude was not a debt I owed for being offered leftovers. I was not trying to make my family suffer. I was learning what my life looked like when their expectations stopped occupying every available space. For the first time, their world was shrinking without me while mine was beginning to expand. My first consulting project came from a small rainwear company that could not understand why its shipping expenses had increased by 18%. Within a week, I found duplicate handling fees buried across 3 vendor agreements and a freight broker charging for warehouse services it had never performed. I renegotiated 2 contracts, recovered part of the overpayment, and earned a performance fee larger than 1 month of my former salary. That success introduced me to Northline Gear, a young outdoor equipment startup with excellent products and a supply chain that was quietly collapsing. Their founder offered me a 6-month operations contract. The salary was modest, but the contract included a small equity stake if I reduced late deliveries and stabilized manufacturing before their next funding review. I created a supplier scorecard, consolidated overlapping orders, and refused to accept the founder's assumption that every delay was the factory's fault. Some problems came from unclear specifications written by Northline itself. Admitting that did not make me popular, but it allowed me to fix the correct problem. Within 3 months, late shipments fell by nearly half. For the first time in my career, people did not praise me for being agreeable. They trusted me because my decisions worked. Then I made a mistake that nearly ended everything. A separate client hired me to renegotiate a manufacturing contract with a large technical fabric producer. I entered the negotiation believing the data gave me all the leverage I needed. I pushed too quickly, challenged fees without understanding the producer's production schedule, and treated a 12-year relationship like a spreadsheet problem. The manufacturer declined to renew the agreement. My client lost its preferred production window and terminated my contract the next morning. The fee I lost mattered, but the humiliation mattered more. I sat in my studio rereading the termination email until every old family label returned to me. Quiet Elena. Useful Elena. The woman who could handle details but should never lead. That night, I nearly contacted Robert. I imagined telling him I had failed and hearing the satisfaction hidden behind his concern. Instead, I opened my notebook and documented every mistake I had made. I had confused being correct with being effective. I had prepared numbers without preparing relationships. I had been so determined to prove that I belonged at the table that I had forgotten to understand the people sitting across from me. Have you ever wondered that if you disappeared completely, whether anyone would truly remember your value or only notice the work you were no longer doing? I had asked myself that question about my family. Now I had to ask it about my career. If my value existed only when everything went smoothly, then it was not value, it was convenience. I enrolled in an advanced negotiation program, studied manufacturing capacity planning, and began conducting post-project interviews with every supplier willing to speak honestly with me. I did not hide my failed contract from Northline. I explained what had happened and showed the founder the safeguards I had created to prevent it from happening again. I expected her to end my engagement. Instead, she said, "I hired you to solve difficult problems. Knowing where you were wrong is part of that." Her response did not rescue me. It gave me room to do the work of rescuing myself. Over the next 4 months, I rebuilt my approach. I spent less time trying to dominate negotiations and more time identifying what each side could not afford to lose. When one Northline factory faced a cash flow gap, I proposed smaller but more frequent orders instead of demanding lower prices. The factory gained predictable revenue, while Northline reduced excess inventory. Both sides benefited, and the relationship became stronger than anything I could have forced through pressure. By the end of my contract, Northline had passed its funding review and offered me a permanent executive position. I declined the salary but retained the equity I had earned. I wanted to build something of my own. I registered Vargas Supply Studio and began advising small outdoor brands that were too young for full corporate procurement teams, but too large to survive on improvised contracts. Success did not arrive in a single dramatic moment. It came through 6 o'clock calls with factories, revised forecasts, rejected proposals, late invoices, and clients who returned because I told them the truth before it became expensive. By my 9th month away, I had 5 recurring clients and enough revenue to hire a part-time analyst. Northline's new investment also increased the value of my equity. My family still knew none of this. Their messages had become less frequent, but their requests had become more revealing. Melissa wanted access to a travel spreadsheet I had created. Caleb needed the warranty details for ski equipment I had ordered years earlier. Diane asked whether I remembered the PIN for our resort account. No one asked what I was building in Portland. They wanted the pieces of my old life that had stopped working after I left it. I saved Diane's resort message but did not answer. Something about the phrase, "our account," stayed with me. I remembered my grandfather Arturo placing a black membership envelope in my hands 7 years earlier. I remembered his warning that families often called something ours when one person quietly carried the responsibility. At the time, I had assumed he was giving me paperwork to organize because I was the dependable one. I had placed those documents in storage and rarely thought about them again. 10 months after I disappeared, an email arrived that made me understand exactly what he had meant. The subject line read, "Founding Membership Renewal. Action required by primary owner Elena Vargas." I initially assumed it was an automated mistake. Then I saw the Silver Pine Alpine Club logo and remembered the black envelope. My grandfather had purchased the club's $45,000 lifetime founding membership when I was 26. Our family had always spoken as though the membership belonged to my parents, but the legal certificate had named me as the sole primary owner from the day it was created. Arturo had given Diane a physical booking card and a numeric PIN because she coordinated family vacations. Silver Pine's older concierge system allowed an authorized coordinator to reserve rooms by telephone, using only that card and PIN. Diane never needed to access the ownership portal, and the confirmations she received displayed the family coordinator's information rather than the legal owner's name. The founding plan included 10 years without annual dues, so she had never paid an ownership fee. She had paid only taxes, meals, and room incidentals, then apparently concluded that the account belonged to her. Arturo had understood exactly what he was doing. A letter attached to the digital certificate contained one sentence I had forgotten. "Keep this in your name, Elena, and remain quiet until remembering the truth becomes necessary." I logged into the portal using the recovery documents from his attorney. The dashboard displayed 7 years of reservations, guest lists, room changes, and account activity. My mother had used the membership for family trips, weekends with friends, and 2 anniversary vacations. I had attended most of them and handled countless problems, never knowing I had the authority to control the account. Then I opened the activity log from the previous Christmas. My name had not been forgotten. A room had been reserved for me in August, alongside everyone else. 9 days before the trip, Diane had logged in through the concierge system and removed me. 3 minutes later, the same room was reassigned to Brooke Halpern, one of Melissa's friends. The change happened 2 hours before Diane texted that she had forgotten me. There had been no lack of space and no booking error. My mother had looked at a complete guest list, selected my name, and replaced it. I downloaded the entire activity history and requested a certified copy from the resort. Then I called the membership department and verified my rights. As the sole primary owner, I could remove every authorized coordinator, reset the booking PIN, and require my written approval for all future guests. I did not cancel anyone's completed stay or demand reimbursement. I simply removed Diane's access, converted the membership to owner-controlled status, and created a rule that no guest could use founding member privileges unless I personally approved the reservation. Silver Pine sent me a confirmation. Primary member Elena Vargas has restricted all family access. I did not forward the message. I did not confront my mother. I changed the password, stored the certified activity report with the ownership documents, and returned to work. If my family had called because they missed me, I might have considered answering. Instead, I waited to see how long it would take them to remember me when the account stopped serving them. The following December, I was preparing a supplier presentation when the archived phone line began filling with notifications. Diane had waited until after purchasing airline tickets, lift passes, and restaurant packages for 8 people before calling Silver Pine to reserve the family's usual rooms. She assumed the membership would provide priority inventory as it always had. The concierge rejected her old PIN and asked to speak with the primary owner. Diane insisted that she was the owner. The representative read the name on the certificate, Elena Vargas. Then she informed Diane that all family access had been revoked 11 months earlier. By 6 that evening, the old line showed 72 missed calls. I watched the number climb without touching my current phone. For the first time in my life, everyone remembered me at once. Not when I changed my number. Not when I spent my birthday alone. Not when an entire year passed without anyone knowing where I lived. They remembered me when a reservation agent said no. Diane's first voicemail sounded indignant. "There has been some terrible misunderstanding. Call the resort and correct it." Her fifth was softer. "Honey, we didn't know you owned the account." By her 12th, she was crying and claiming Arturo had intended the membership for the entire family. Melissa moved immediately to blame. "This is too much, Elena. Mom made one mistake, and now you're ruining Christmas for 8 people." Her next message revealed why she was especially desperate. She had arranged a sponsored winter fashion campaign at Silver Pine and accepted an advance based on delivering photographs from the resort. Caleb said our parents were getting older and accused me of creating stress over one missing room. Robert left only 2 messages. In the first, he told me to act like an adult. In the second, after apparently learning whose name was on the documents, he asked me to call him privately before Diane made the situation worse. I listened without the satisfaction I had expected. The sound of their panic did not make me happy. It made the truth impossible to ignore. They were not grieving the loss of a relationship. They were negotiating the return of a benefit. I opened the old email folder and searched for the word, sorry. Across an entire year of messages, Diane had used it twice. The first time she wrote, "I'm sorry you misunderstood." The second time she wrote, I'm sorry you're still angry." Neither apology acknowledged that she had removed my name from an existing reservation. Melissa sent me an email with the subject line, "You owe us an explanation." I replied with one sentence, "I do not owe anyone an explanation for controlling property that legally belongs to me." Diane answered within a minute, Your grandfather bought that for the family. I wrote. Then why did he name one owner? After that, the calls doubled. Silver Pine offered them public rate rooms, but the founding member inventory they had relied upon was unavailable. The remaining holiday package would cost more than $26,000 and required immediate payment. Their airline tickets and activity bookings were largely non-refundable. Melissa's campaign deadline could not be moved. Suddenly, my absence was no longer an emotional inconvenience they could dismiss. It had a price. I finally agreed to meet them in Denver the following week, where I already had a client audit scheduled. I imposed 3 conditions. All 4 of them had to attend. The meeting would take place in a private business lounge rather than their home, and no one would receive access to the membership afterward. Diane replied that there was no reason to meet if I had already decided. I answered that she was free to stay home. 30 seconds later, she confirmed that everyone would attend. Before the meeting, Silver Pine sent me the certified activity report. The entry removing my reservation included the exact time, the room number, the name that replaced mine, and Diane's authorization code. I printed 5 copies. My family believed we were meeting to discuss how to save their Christmas vacation. I was going to show them that the previous Christmas had never been an accident. Diane began speaking before I sat down. We are not here to fight. We are here to resolve a misunderstanding and put this unpleasant year behind us. She had arranged the ownership documents, the missing reservation, my disappearance, and their current financial problem into one harmless word: misunderstanding. Robert sat beside her with his arms folded. Melissa kept checking her phone, probably watching the deadline on her sponsorship agreement. Caleb looked uncomfortable but still nodded when Diane spoke, as though agreement might end the meeting faster. I placed the membership certificate on the table. There is no misunderstanding. Arturo purchased the Silver Pine founding membership for $45,000. He named me as the sole owner. Mom was an authorized booking coordinator. That authority was revocable at any time. Robert leaned forward. Your mother coordinated those trips for 7 years. We paid for every vacation. You paid taxes, meals, equipment rentals, and room charges. The founding membership itself was paid in full before you ever used it. It carries no annual dues for 10 years. You did not purchase any portion of it. It was still meant for all of us, Diane insisted. Your grandfather trusted me with the card. He trusted you to coordinate bookings. He trusted me with ownership. Melissa exhaled sharply. Fine. Legally, your name is on it. We understand. Can you restore access until after Christmas? We already spent thousands of dollars. No. Her expression changed immediately. My contract depends on that location. And my room depended on being part of this family. Diane pressed her palms against the table. I apologized for forgetting it. That is the second reason we are here. I distributed the activity report. You did not forget. For several seconds, no one spoke. Diane stared at the page without moving. Melissa found the relevant entry first. Her eyes shifted from the document to our mother. Caleb took his copy and read the line twice. Robert's folded arms slowly dropped. I pointed to the record. My room was reserved on August 4th. On December 13th, at 2:14 p.m., Mom removed me. At 2:17, the room was assigned to Brooke Halpern. At 4:32, Mom texted me that the resort was full. Caleb looked at Melissa. Brooke went with you? Melissa swallowed. She had a photography project. I asked Mom whether Elena would care if she skipped 1 year. You asked her to remove me? I said you were always busy and probably wouldn't want to come. Mom said she would handle it. I had already requested the week off. Everyone knew that. Diane finally spoke. Melissa's opportunity was important. Brooke needed to be there to photograph her campaign, and there were no other rooms. I thought you would understand. You thought I would accept it because I always had before. I was trying to avoid conflict. No, you made a decision and lied because the lie was easier than admitting that you had traded my place to someone more useful. Robert rubbed his forehead. Diane, you told me the hotel had made an error. She told me the same thing, Caleb said. Melissa looked back at the report. You told me Elena decided not to come. Diane's control began to fracture. Everyone needs to stop acting as though I committed some terrible offense. It was one vacation. Elena disappeared for a year and locked us out of a family membership. How is that proportional? I looked directly at her. You are still measuring the cost in hotel rooms. I am measuring it in truth. You had a reservation for me. You removed it. You gave it to someone else. Then you blamed an imaginary booking mistake so you would not have to admit that I ranked below your convenience. That is not what happened. It is recorded line by line. She pushed the report away. What do you want from me? I wanted the truth a year ago. I learned to live without it. Now I want boundaries. Robert gestured toward the certificate. What exactly have you done to the account? I removed every authorized coordinator. I converted it to owner-controlled access. From now on, guests can use the membership only when I approve them personally. No one in this family has independent booking rights. You cannot permanently exclude us, Diane said. I already have. Her face tightened. After everything we have done for you? I almost laughed, but I wanted my words to remain clear. You forgot to book my room. I am simply remembering the owner's name. Melissa called the sentence cruel. Caleb stared at the table. Robert asked whether I understood how much money they stood to lose. I told him I understood perfectly. They had purchased flights before confirming accommodation because they assumed my property would always be available. Melissa had signed a commercial agreement based on access she did not own. Diane had invited 2 other couples and described Silver Pine as our private club without ever reading the certificate. Those decisions belonged to them. Diane said she could still go directly to the resort and speak to a manager. As if summoned by the threat, all 5 of our phones received the same email. At my request, Silver Pine had copied every former authorized user on the final confirmation. Primary member Elena Vargas has restricted all family access. No reservation, upgrade, guest privilege, or founding member benefit may be issued without her written approval. Diane read it and looked at me as though I had embarrassed her publicly. You sent this to everyone. I asked the resort to make the rules clear. You said there was a misunderstanding. Melissa pushed back her chair. If I lose this sponsorship, the company can demand its advance back. Then return money you accepted for access you did not control. You are enjoying this? No? I stopped needing to enjoy your consequences when I learned to enjoy my own life. Robert was the first to understand that the conversation was over. He asked whether I would ever reconsider. I told him ownership was not negotiable, and reconciliation, if it ever happened, would require accountability without access as a reward. Diane accused me of tearing the family apart. I gathered my documents and stood. The family did not break when you lost a resort. It broke when you decided one person could be removed, and no one needed to tell her the truth. I left them at the table. Despite the written warning, Diane and Melissa flew to Colorado on Christmas Eve and went directly to Silver Pine. They apparently believed a manager would override my instructions once confronted in person. The resort refused to check them in under my membership. Security did not create a spectacle. It simply escorted them away from the private check-in area after Diane refused to accept the answer. I knew because Silver Pine sent me an incident report as the account owner. Their available alternative was a basic motel 52 miles away, costing nearly $5,000 for the remaining rooms. The lift transfers and dining packages attached to Silver Pine could not be refunded. Melissa's sponsor canceled the campaign and demanded the return of a $6,800 advance. She forwarded me the notice with a message saying she hoped I was proud of myself. I replied that her business agreement had never been my responsibility. The social cost landed hardest on Diane. The 2 couples she had invited booked elsewhere after learning that she did not own the membership she had discussed for years. One of them contacted me directly to apologize for assuming the club belonged to my parents. Diane later accused me of humiliating her in front of her friends, even though I had never spoken to them about her. The truth had embarrassed her without any help from me. The consequences also divided the people she had expected to defend her. Caleb learned that she had deliberately replaced me and told her he would not contribute toward the lost bookings. Robert froze their shared vacation budget after discovering she had lied to him about the original reservation. He emailed me that he was staying elsewhere for a while and had insisted on counseling. Melissa blamed Diane for promising that I would never challenge the room change. Diane blamed Melissa for requesting it. The united front that had called me dramatic collapsed as soon as each person had to pay part of the bill. I did not celebrate their ruined vacation. I celebrated the fact that none of them could make it my emergency. I spent that Christmas in Portland with people who knew nothing about Silver Pine until I chose to tell them. We cooked an uneven dinner in my apartment, exchanged inexpensive gifts, and talked about the year we had survived. No one needed a luxury resort to prove that we belonged at the same table. At midnight, the old phone line showed another 23 calls. I closed the dashboard without listening. The consequences lasted long after Christmas. Diane stopped posting photographs of her annual Aspen vacation because there was no annual Aspen vacation. When friends asked what had changed, she could either admit that the membership belonged to the daughter she had excluded or invent another explanation. Melissa booked a cheaper resort for a later campaign, but losing the Silver Pine sponsorship damaged her relationship with the agency that had hired her. Robert eventually returned home, though he kept the vacation finances separate and stopped allowing Diane to speak for him. Caleb apologized for his guilt-filled messages, but I told him an apology did not automatically restore closeness. It only created the possibility of rebuilding it. Diane sent several letters. The first accused me of carrying revenge too far. The second described everything she had sacrificed as a mother. Only the third contained the sentence I had waited a year to read. I removed your reservation because Melissa's project felt more urgent, and I lied because I assumed you would forgive me. I believed that admission. I did not mistake it for repair. I never restored her access. That boundary was permanent. The following spring, I used Silver Pine for the first time as its actual owner. I invited the small team that had helped Vargas Supply Studio grow, personally approved every guest, and checked in under my own name. There was no dramatic confrontation.
We hope the story gave you both drama and meaningful message. This fictional narrative was created only for entertainment, education, and dramatic reflection. We hope it reminds you that when someone keeps taking your kindness without giving respect in return, you are allowed to change how much access they have to you. Protecting your heart is not cruelty, it is wisdom learned through experience.